حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا. من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له. ونشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وأن محمدا عبده ورسوله أدى الأمانة ونصح الأمة وجاهد بالله حق جهاده فما ترك لنا خيرا إلا ودلنا عليه وما ترك لنا شرا إلا ونهانا عنه. فصلاة وسلام أتمين على حبيبنا وشفيعنا وقرة أعيننا سيدنا محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Dear brothers, subhanAllah, nowadays it's hard to have any khutbah without mentioning what's going on in Gaza, without ignoring what's happening to our brothers and sisters there. But subhanAllah, as Muslims, also we're obligated that in any major events or calamities, like what's happening in Palestine and other places in the world, we have to address and analyze and go over those calamities through the lenses of Islam, through the guidance of Kitab and Sunnah. Because those calamities, as Sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam have told us, will happen more frequently until the day of judgment comes. And this is part of the test that we're going to be exposed to. As Sayyidina Muhammad says, قال صلى الله عليه وسلم عن أبي هريرة قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم من صحيح مسلم لا تقوم الساعة حتى يكثر الهرج. قال وما الهرج يا رسول الله؟ قال القتل. He said, Sayyidina Muhammad, that Yawm al-Qiyamah, the day of judgment, will not come until the Hajj become more frequently. And they asked, what is the Hajj? He said, the death. So that is part of life. A part of it also that we'll have to be prepared for such events, to stand for those events as Allah have ordered us. And that doesn't mean that we have to be paralyzed, that we have to be depressed, that we have to sit in the corner and cry. This is not what Allah have meant for us to be doing. And this is what we were created for. Yes, we get angry and we have to take an act for what's happening, but also we have to analyze and react accordingly as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His messengers have told us to do so. And subhanAllah, with that being said, a lot of questions that will start to be raised, and they were raised before for 1,000 years, and that will happen among us as Muslims and our kids. One of the major questions that people start to ask, and one of those doubts that start to happen, is asking why it's happening. We call it mu'adalat al-shar, or the calamity, or the question of evil. A lot of people who claim to be, who are atheists, they have this argument as a basic argument. Why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, of course, is their question. We have complete trust in Allah. Why Allah is allowing that to happen to the children and the women of Gaza? Why Allah is allowing that to happen in different areas of the world? I want to be Muslim. Where's the Nasr and the victory of Allah? And subhanAllah, it struck me like, I would say 15 years ago, my mentor, who was supposed to be a PhD with high degrees, super intelligent, was an atheist, and this was the first word saying to me, like, I don't believe in God because He's allowing children to die. And subhanAllah, like, you have your PhD and you're still not able to address this simple, challenging question that we as Muslims know the answer for. But of course, as young kids, you have to, your kids, your grandkids, those questions are going to happen. And instead of being angry, we have to address it, analyze it, go over steps, and know why he came up with that question. So we're going to talk about that because this is a reminder. Again, we all know those issues, the core beliefs, but we have to remind ourselves. Because that's going to be coming, as we said, more frequent. So there's 4 things that we have to remember. And most importantly, again, it's a given, but sometimes we tend to forget that a lot, is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala look at the dunya in a different way that we look at it. That this dunya is not worth a thing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. and to His Messenger, this is just a phase. That we were created in phases. We tend to forget. There was the alam al-dharb before the soul went into the body, and then we in our wombs, and then living for those years, and then there is a barzakh, there's a qabr, there's a barzakh. It's all phases. So whatever calamities we're going through is in that specific phase. And we know that this phase is a tool to a greater goal. It's not a goal by itself to live in this dunya. The dunya is a tool to harvest and to be a good Muslim, so deserve Jannah in the Akhirah. We have to remind we have to be reminded about those facts. Subhanallah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said in the Quran, ولولا أن يكون الناس أمة واحدة لجعلنا لمن يكفر بالرحمن لبيوت سقفا من فضة ومعارج عليها يظهرون. That if it was not for the people to be mesmerized or to becoming evil, He would have given the kuffar an parallel fortune and a parallel power and a parallel money. And this was a metaphor. They would have given him houses that are extravagant, that are made of silver. This is the ultimate wealth. SubhanAllah, Allah wisdom, He didn't give the non-believers everything they wish for. Otherwise, everyone would have thought that, okay, the key of success is what you see in front of your eyes. So if the non-believers having it all, then we all have to follow that. A lot of people do so. SubhanAllah, even a lot of the Muslim civilizations, they have some of that, and still a lot of people are following them. Imagine if they had it all. Imagine there was no poverty, and no homelessness, and no drug abuse in such countries. A lot of Muslims would have left their religion and followed that based on what they see. Because a lot of Muslims, their measurements, their way of assessing things is what they see in the dunya, not what they are doing for the akhirah. So that tells you that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not give it all, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave them some of that because this dunya is not worth anything. And then we say in the hadith, which is kind of complete that meaning, عن سهل بن سعد رواه الترمذي الصحيح that قال رسول الله لو كانت الدنيا تعدل عند الله جناح بعوضة لما سقى كافرا فيها شربة ماء. That if this dunya was worth of anything, like a wing of a mosquito, who had not given a kafir even a sip of water. This means the measurements of success is not what you have in the dunya, it's what you do for the akhirah. Again, we tend to forget. If somebody have it all, have the money, the power, say, well, Allah loves him. Who told you so? It might be a test to see how he's going to use that money. So we don't judge based on what we see. We judge based on what you do for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we remember this beautiful hadith, Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, when he saw Sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam sleeping on the floor, and he said, he was kind of saying, okay, why is that happening to you, Rasulullah? Yeah, why is that happening to you? Why you don't have all the treasure? You can ask for the one dua. And he said, of course, the narration is narration, but Abdullah Mas'ud asking Sayyidina Muhammad that, there was another narration about Umar al-Khattab. He said, Mali ولهذه الدنيا, Mali وللدنيا, إن مثلي ومثل الدنيا كراكب استظل تحت شجرة ثم راح وتركها. I don't care about this dunya. Me and this dunya is like a person who's traveling, who was under the shade of the tree, and the tree here represents the dunya. He stayed there for a brief time, then he left it and kept moving to his destination. So, and there's a lot of hadith, there's a lot of ayat, of course, as we know. We don't have the time to go over them, but that goes over the same thing. وإنما الحياة الدنيا لعب ولهو وزينة وتفاخر بينكم وتكاثر بالأموال والأولاد كمثل زرع أعجب الكفار نباته ثم يهيج فتراه مصفرا ثم يكون حطاما. That this dunya that you love, that we look for, is just a green plant that flourish for a specific phase of time, and then it goes away and it fades away. And it's just nothing but a delusion. So why do we say that? Not because, I said, not to be detached from the dunya, not doing what you want, not to be powerful, as Sayyidina Muhammad orders us to do, and the Quran Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala orders us to do. It's just because the dunya cannot be attached to you emotionally. It means that if you lose someone, and you can, and you might, if you lose a fortune, you're not attached to emotion to this dunya. You're already prepared. This is a phase, this is a tool, it's not a goal by itself. Allah is testing me for something that's going to be brief, that something is not worth it on the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we have to keep reminded about that, because sometimes we tend to forget. Number two, which is linked to number one, that the nature of this dunya, the nature Allah created this dunya filled with calamities. We cannot have it all. Allah sent calamities and trials and tribulation from the day Sayyidina Adam descended to this dunya. And He told them, you're not going to have misery in your brain or in your soul. You're not going to have shaqa, but you're going to have hardship. There's a difference between shaqa, like between feeling painful, not emotionally stable, or having this misery inside, and between working hard and having hardship. You can have a hardship as a Muslim and have peace inside your heart. But this is what we're looking for. We want to have that peace and that tranquility in our heart, no matter what hardship we're being exposed to. So all the prophets had hardships, but from inside, they were connected with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They didn't panic. They didn't have jaza, what they call. And from the time of Sayyidina Adam, Yawm al-Qiyamah, those calamities will happen. No matter what, is unpreventable. أم حسبتم تدخلوا الجنة ولما يأتكم مثل الذين خلوا من قبلكم مستهم البأساء والضراء وزلزلوا حتى يقول متى نصر الله ألا إن نصر الله قريب. That do you think in the Quran that you not going to be exposed to the thing that your predecessors have been exposed to? They were exposed to tribulations and trials, and they were shaken from inside until they come to Sayyidina Muhammad and say, where is the victory of Allah? And Allah promised them the victory of Allah is going to come, is coming near. And this is part of the Ummah. You belong to the Ummah of Islam. And you belong to the history of the Ummah. You cannot just dissociate yourself from what happened to the Ummah, what's going to happen in the future. Why would we read the history of Ummah? Because we go over those calamities. We go over what happened, or what were the Muslims exposed to. And you're not immune from that. You're part of this Ummah, which is good, alhamdulillah. It's an honor to be part of this Ummah. And we do remember that, subhanAllah, there was times where prophets with the S were killed by Bani Israel. What could it be worse than killing a prophet? A prophet with the revelation was descended on him through Jibreel, died, and his message did not die. Of course, they kept going, but they killed prophets. What could be worse than that? And we have to remember, there were societies of Muslims all wiped out. Of course, they were as shuhada to the Jannah, but they were wiped out in Surah Al-Buruj. All our kids memorized that surah about those people before the era of Sayyidina Muhammad, where this young man came and made da'wah to them, and they became Muslim, and the king who claimed to be God became angry, and he just built that trench and threw them all, women and kids and men and elderly, and set fire on them. It happened. Did they win? Did they lose? They won. They went to Jannah. And then we remember the seerah of Sayyidina Muhammad. All his children, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, died in front of his eyes. Children, of course, even with the way also they grew up, except for Sayyidina Fatima, who preceded him. And she died after a year or two, if I remember, from that. We know that his wife Khadija died in front of his eyes. His uncle who wished that he became Muslim, his other uncle who was like a brother to him, Sayyidina Hamza, and Sayyidina Mus'ab, in the same day, in Ghazwat Uhud, another 70 of his Sahaba. We remember the Bi'r Ma'un, that sad event after Ghazwat Uhud, just a year, within a year of Ghazwat Uhud, after a year, within that year of Bi'r Ma'un, where Sayyidina Muhammad sent 40 Sahaba, top-notch Sahaba, young Sahaba. Imagine that you prepared young Sahaba for the Shaykh. He knows how hard it is to prepare kids to be light of Islam. They don't know Quran, they're Hafada. He prepared him in the 20s, not older than that. Sent 40 of them for da'wah to Najd tribes. And the Bani Amir, this tribe, betrayed the trust of Sayyidina Muhammad and killed them with cold blood. Sayyidina Muhammad stayed for 1 month praying tahajjud, praying in Salatul Fajr, dua against the one who killed them. Against the one who killed them. See the pain that Sayyidina Muhammad went through. Praying for a whole month. And then remember that did not stop there. The whole seerah of Sayyidina Muhammad is filled with calamities. But those calamities, when the Muslims were exposed to, what made them? Was it supposed to be for them to be miserable? No. Those calamities had a lot of khayr, a lot of goodness in it itself. It purified the Muslims, first of all. It strengthened their iman, elevated their affairs, and their ranks in Jannah, and it distinguished the Muslims from the non-believers and from the munafiqeen. And those events, why we go over them, because we have to look at it differently. How did it affect the Sahaba in the way that they became? Where like they were strong enough that when Sayyidina Muhammad passed away, it was probably one of the worst calamity they were ever exposed to. And next year they made jihad, they went and they spread they conquered like half of the world at that time, leaving everything behind. Because they were strong enough through being exposed to those calamities and being more powerful men. Number 3, brothers, so we said that the dunya of itself, how does it look? How Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala look at this life, at this dunya? How should we be like him? How Sayyidina Muhammad also look at this life? Then we'll talk about number 2, this life itself is based on being built on calamities. So number 3 also, which is also linked to that pain, and we all know that, whether we're Muslims or not, pain is a necessity to grow. SubhanAllah, my Shaykh used to say that this life is a series of painful events and attempts to push back those painful events. So it's in Arabic is alaman wa muhawalatun li daf'i hadha al-alam. Think about it that way. Our kids studying is pain, right? But it's an attempt to push the pain of failure. You are working hard, long hours, this is a pain. It's an attempt to push the pain of not having money, not supporting your kids. So it's a series of painful events in an attempt to remove or to push away more painful events. And this is, subhanAllah, as we all know, our parents were stronger than us. Why is that? I'm talking emotionally and like mentally, because they were exposed to more hardship and challenges. And we tell that to our kids, but we brag about it. Say, I had it harder than you. And you're concerned to your kids because they're not going to have it hard as you, because they may not be strong emotionally and mentally like you. This is a concern, right? This is a concern. So we all talk about the first generation being more tougher because they had more challenges. And this is one of the main challenges that people are dealing with right now in this nation right now, having a soft generation, not being exposed to enough challenges. And subhanAllah, this is why pain itself, a challenge, is a necessity to grow, is a part of life, is a rahmah and mercy from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Number 4, and this is also important to teach our kids, that Allah does not send pure evil. Allah does not send pure, the sharr al-mahr. With every evil there's good within it, or part of it, or after it. This is out of Allah's mercy, Allah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Nothing is, you might see it as all evil, but something good will come out of it, whether you like it or not. And this is beautifully manifested in the hadith of Abi Yahya Suhaib ibn Sufyan in Sahih al-Tirmidhi, that عجبا لأمر المؤمن إن أمره كله خير وليس لأحد إلا المؤمن ذلك إن أصابته سراء شكر فكان خيرا له أو خيرا له وإن أصابته ضراء صبر فكان خيرا له. Sayyidina Muhammad is astonished about the affairs of the mu'min, the believer, that no matter what happens to him, there's good within it. If something good comes to him, he becomes thankful and Allah will reward him. If something bad, get exposed to something bad, he becomes patient and he gets rewarded for it regardless. And subhanAllah, this is why we read Surah Al-Kahf every Friday. We have those 3 beautiful stories manifested with the qadar of the destiny. How do you look on that? We know the first story about the people, the owner of the ships that Sayyidina al-Khudr have destroyed it. They knew the good that came out of it right away, in a few days or a few hours when they reached the other shore, and the king didn't touch it because it was destroyed or somehow defected. They knew it right away. This was good. It's always good for us. We would like to know what is the khair, what is the good coming out of certain calamity right away. That would be nice. If you didn't pick a job and then next day you see the reason why it was not a good thing to do. That would give you tranquility. We all wish that, subhanAllah. But there's other ways that something you may never know, or might take years to know. Like the orphans, as we know in the same surah, the orphans who had that wall or that house that kind of was about to fall, and Sayyidina Khudr built it back, so because they had treasure underneath it. So those kids, they grew up and eventually they kind of tried to fix it. They took that treasure and they took it. They probably didn't even know that happens at that time when they were kids, when Sayyidina Khudr even tried to fix it. They didn't know about it. They probably didn't even link the 2 events together. So sometimes you don't even know what's happened and what was here for you. And what is even harder than that is the story of those two, where Sayyidina Khudr killed their son because he was turned to be a bad person and replaced him with someone better. Those probably, we don't know, I'm just assuming, probably spent years until the death being sad about this event, about losing a child. Did they notice the fear of it? Nobody told them. Or we were not told of the sort that they knew about it. They will know when they will get know about that. Inshallah, Yawm al-Qiyamah, in Jannah, inshallah. But this is how it happens. You cannot claim that you're going to know what is good in it right now. Do we know what is good in what's happening in Gaza right now? We don't know. Do we know, as trusting Allah, that it's going to be khair? Yes, we do. Because we trust Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we trust what is mentioned in the Quran. And we trust what is also mentioned details in Sunnah about what's going to happen in that era as Muslims. And if you have doubt, yes, you go back to the Quran and the Sunnah that addresses what's going to happen there. And this is not the subject of now, because I know a lot of Mashaykh in the previous 2 weeks have talked about that in details. أقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله. So now, inshallah, the second part will be brief. And we always try to make it something practical that addresses us as Muslims in this country. Talking about now those answers or those 4 points about the issue of evil or the mu'adalat al-shar in Arabic. So what can we do now differently? What can we do as here living thousands of miles from what's happening? And what can we do to make ourselves stronger or more immune to those calamities and stronger to where we can be purified and be better Muslims when we get exposed, not to be from the hypocrites who withdraw back if we get exposed to that. Or we can, and this is kind of really hard because this is what concerns me personally the most. If I get exposed to a calamity, would it be from the Muslims or from the hypocrites who start to argue and be angry to what's happening to me? This is my concern. I mean, it should be all our concerns as Muslims. We want to keep and maintain our iman, and strengthen our iman. And part of the answers have to do with what we said about, that we have to train ourselves, that this is part of life. Hardships can come. We just ask Allah, we don't ask for them to come. We just ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, do not wish to meet the enemy. But if the enemy comes or the hardship comes, we're going to be patient. Sabr jameel, to be patient in a beautiful way, like Sayyidina Yaqub. So, but part of it also, that we have to minimize the exposure to what weakens our soul. We call it in Arabic al-muhinat. And the muhinat is whatever weakens your soul by being exposed to excess of luxury. We call them also in Arabic fudul al-mubah. The ulama were very wise in the way Ibn al-Qayyim mentioned that the excess of halal, the excess of food, the excess of clothes, the excess of luxurious stuff, cars, name it, weakens your soul. It exposes it to be less prone to be hard, or less prone to be tolerant to such hardship. So what can we do different? I'm not saying that to change your lifestyle, but to train yourself, to restrain for certain things that even they consider halal, not saying they're haram, but for you to train yourself and your kids to kind of be less tempted to have it all. You have money to buy a luxurious car. Nobody can say it's haram to do that. But try to restrain yourself a little bit. So you're doing that for the sake of Allah. Doing it because I want to be less exposed to those muhinat, those things that weaken your heart. My kids, though, they don't have to have the best toys and the best gadgets. I'm doing that for them to know that not everything is granted. Even if they have the money and they have the tool to do so. I mean, we have day-to-day examples. I mean, including I talk about myself. I'm short of doing. I have to do better. I mean, again, I'm giving those examples because I can relate to that. I mean, we go to a place an hour away from here, and we have to, stop the car with a lot of candies because what if our kids get hungry for 5 minutes? They have to eat within this hour. We don't even think that they have to be patient a little bit to control themselves. I mean, we will have a brother working 10 to 12-hour shift, just supporting his family, and if astaghfirullah, forgot his wife's anniversary, His wife would go flip over, because he did something that was unforgettable. You don't love me anymore. What is that leading us to? Even a brother who is obsessed with food, if his wife presents him the same food for 3 days in a row, he will go crazy also. What does that tell you? That we have to tough up a little bit, and man up a little bit. I know this dunya is just a tool. This dunya, we have to be emotionally attached to it as much as we can, and this dunya can weaken us if we don't control it well. And this is where it's hard. It's hard to restrain from things when you have the money for it. Yes, if you're poor, you can't afford certain things. It's a sabr, it's being patient, but you're not doing extra effort to it. But if you have the means and you have the money and you strain yourself for the sake of strengthening yourself, this is where you're doing yourself a favor. You're doing your kids a favor. And because, this is all that question that I'm going to conclude with that it comes to that, who is free? Us or our brothers in Palestine? I mean, you see a sister out of the rebels coming out and just trying to make sure that her hijab is well maintained over her head. And the other way, sometimes we even feel short doing that here when we go to a wedding. See the difference. You have a brother who's half of his family died in front of him 5 minutes ago. He's just tough and saying, La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. Well, think about it. If that happens to you here, the kids go through an accident, would you do the same? And this is a question that you have to train yourself about that, not to be obsessed about imagining bad scenarios coming to you, but you have enough faith to go over that? You have faith to go over that. So who's the free? Who is enslaved to his own materialistic things? They are the free, we're the slaves. They are free, we're in chain with those things. And hard times will come. Inshallah, I'm not asking for them again, but they're probably going to come. Whether here, directly or indirectly, we're getting exposed to that. Are we being exposed to that? Seeing our brothers dying in front of our eyes every day, not being able to do anything about it. So just something to think about, brothers. And I'm sorry, I didn't mean to be hard. I'm trying to mention that as a reminder to myself, more than being a reminder to yourself. نقول قولي هذا والحمد لله رب العالمين. اللهم إني داعي فأمنوا، اللهم يا أرحم الراحمين يا ذا الجلال والإكرام. اللهم انصر اخواننا المستضعفين في فلسطين. اللهم كن لهم معينا وناصرا يا ارحم الراحمين. اللهم آوي جرحاهم ومرضاهم واعف وعافهم يا ارحم الراحمين. اللهم كن لهم يا كريم وانصرهم وعنا على نصرتهم يا ارحم الراحمين. اللهم عليك بجميع من طغى وتجبر. اللهم عليك بهم فانهم لا يعجزونك يا ارحم الراحمين. اللهم يا رحمن الرحيم يا ارحم الراحمين. الى من تكلني؟ إلى العدو يتجهمني أم إلى قريب ملكته أمري. اللهم إن لم يكن بك علي غضب فلا أبالي، ولكن عافيتك أوسع لي. اللهم أعوذ بنور وجهك الذي أشرقت له الظلمات وصلح له أمر الدنيا والآخرة أن ينزل بي غضبك، أن يحل علي سخطك. اللهم لك العتبى حتى ترضى ولا إله إلا الله. اللهم أسألك من الخير كله عاجله وآجله ما علمنا منه وما لم نعلم، ونعوذ بك من الشر كله عاجله وآجله ما علمنا منه وما لم نعلم. اللهم نسألك من خير ما سألك منه عبدك ونبيك محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم، ونعوذ بك من شر ما استعاذك منه عبدك ونبيك محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم. أقول قولي هذا والحمد لله رب العالمين وأقم الصلاة.
الله أكبر الله أكبر.